Today on Monson Made This, we are making seasonally appropriate sushi. I'm very excited to share this new sushi recipe with you. I sort of came up with it last week and I fell in love with it and I've eaten it twice, and so I'm gonna make it for you so that you can make it for yourself. And the star ingredient in this sushi roll, as I said in the teaser that's seasonally appropriate, is this Kabocha squash. I think I said it right in this video. I used the same squash in a handmade pasta video, and I think the whole time I called it Kabocha squash. Anyways, I will link that so you can watch it because it's a great video and not many people have seen it. So the star of this sushi roll again is this Kabocha squash that I'm going to be roasting off here in just a moment. It's full of mushrooms and it's got this corn sauce, which I'm gonna kind of hopefully make for you correctly in this video. And it's got pickled onions and red pepper. It's amazing. So let's get started on this squash and then I'll take you through the rest of the steps to make this amazing fall-inspired sushi roll. So this is a Kabocha squash. It's amazing. The skin is edible. Inside is this delicious, sweet and creamy flesh. We're gonna cut this open in the best way that I know how. So I like to take the top and the bottom off. Please be careful, as with any winter squash, this thing is kind of difficult. So I'm just trying to get it exposed a little bit. It's gonna help with the cutting later. So cut off the top. Let's cut off the bottom. Please make sure your knife is sharp and that your fingers are far away. It helps me to kind of rotate it a little bit, get my knife wedged in there, and then turn the squash. All right, there we go. So now that we have the top and the bottom exposed, we're going to just drive the knife down the center and then rip it down the sides. And there we have our Kabocha squash. So let's go ahead and scoop out the seeds. I'm just going to spoon these seeds out into my compost bin. If you watched any of my plastic-free July videos, you'll know that I was composting, or starting to, and I have been pretty consistently since then. I actually really like it. I'm not sure if these seeds are edible like pumpkin seeds. I'm sure they are. This is probably a huge waste, even though I am composting. But so I'm just gonna get rid of these, any sinewy bits. And I'm only gonna be cooking up half of it in this video, but obviously you do the same with both halves. So, all right, everything is scooped out of the center. Now let's slice it up. To slice this now, I'm going to be doing this into little half moon shapes. And I find the easiest way to do this is just to kind of slice down and kind of rotate it as you go. You want it to be about, I don't know, ½ inch thick slices. Some are a little thicker, that's okay. And again, continue to watch your fingers because it still is a little bit difficult to slice through, as you can see right here. And we're going to be placing these onto a baking sheet. That one's a little bit thick, but it's all right. I might have to do a little bit of rearranging in order to get all of them on there. If you get down to the end here where maybe it gets a little bit dangerous and a little bit wobbly, I like to kind of slice into it from one angle and then flip it over like that. All right, so do a little puzzle action here. That should work. Okay, so these are going to be baking at 375 with a bit of a teriyaki marinade, so I'm going to make that for you right now and then brush it on here. For this marinade, this is similar to what I made in my, I think it was in the sandwich challenge video. So you just want equal parts maple syrup and Bragg's liquid amino, or you could use soy sauce and agave, whatever you want, you just need equal parts. I think that's equal. And then I'm using the silicone brush here just to mix them together. And then I'll use this to baste them. Now, just like I did with my last sushi video with the eggplant, you want to be careful when you put this kind of sugary coating on these foods that are going to be baking, because they have a tendency to burn. So even though I've already got a nice puddle and I'm going against what I'm trying to tell you, you want to watch where it goes, just because it'll smoke up if there's too much of this mixture that burns onto the pan. And my oven is already preheated to 375. These are going to go in for about 30 to 40 minutes, and I'm going to flip them and baste the other side halfway through. Today's sushi roll is actually going to be made with brown rice, and it was something that I've never ever tried to use to make sushi, and in all my tests it worked out really well. So because it takes 98 minutes to cook in my rice cooker, I have already made that ahead of time. So I'm going to take this out and I'm just going to dump it into a bowl. Hopefully I don't burn myself. Actually, let me grab another hot pad. And I'm just going to dump this into a bowl. Now, I was a little bit worried that the rice wouldn't be sticky enough to work for sushi, but I used a short grain brown rice and it worked perfectly. I didn't have to add anything to it. Just I cooked it according to my rice cooker's directions for making brown rice, and the texture is amazing. And the only real trick that you have to do when you're making sushi with brown rice is that you really need to over season the rice. The brown rice tends to kind of absorb a lot of flavor, so I would maybe double up on the amount of like sushi rice vinegar that you're going to use. So I am of course using my this sushi rice vinegar here that I always purchase. It's pre-seasoned, and I'm going to be quite heavy with this, and I'm going to stir it around, make sure everything gets coated, and then I'm actually going to taste it to see if it has the right flavor. If not, I'm going to add a bit more. All right, so the stirring here helps to incorporate all of the vinegar, but it also helps to cool it off a little bit. So as I said, I'm going to taste some. I've got it seasoned perfectly. Again, you want to make sure that you have a little bit extra on here. So this is still way too hot for me to try to roll it up. So I'm just going to cover it and let it set aside, and hopefully it gets to room temperature by the time the squash is ready to go. So let's talk about fillings. For the inside of this roll, I'm putting some strange things together, but I promise the flavors are all very solid. So we have our kabocha squash, which is of course cooking, and we're gonna be adding avocado in the middle, and I'll just slice this and kind of spoon it in as we roll the rolls. I'm going to be adding some pea shoots here, pea greens. These just add a nice, vibrant, fresh flavor to it as well. They kind of help to decorate the ends of the roll. I have already baked some oyster mushrooms, and I will link the video where I made my oyster mushroom walking taco. I cooked it the same way, basically just baked it in one of these silicone bags for 30 minutes, and I'll show you how we're gonna treat these in just a moment. I have some pickled onions. These are just onions that have been soaking in equal parts water and white vinegar for, I don't know, a few hours, a day. These just add a nice acidity to the roll. And then finally, I do have some cucumber sliced here, but we're actually gonna be using red pepper inside, and this is gonna give us that same sort of vibrant crunchiness that the cucumber would, but just kind of an extra layer of flavor. So I'm gonna go back over to my island here, slice some of these things up, and show you how I finalize these ingredients. For the red pepper, really simple. I'm just going to be cutting it into thin strips. If you didn't want to use red pepper, definitely use the cucumber, but I just think it adds a really cool flavor and also just a nice bit of color on the inside as well, having kind of a red pop in there. And you don't want these too thin, but thin enough that they're going to, stand out but not be, overpowering, because they do contain quite a bit of flavor. And I'll just put these back into my dish until I'm ready to roll up. Now, these mushrooms here, as I said, they were baked in this silicone bag. I probably won't use all of these here today. These are just oyster mushrooms. Found them at Whole Foods, or you can grow your own. I did that recently. So what I want to do is just kind of take the connective end off and break them apart. These add a nice bit of chewiness to the roll, great texture, as well as really nice flavor. And in the video that I'll have linked for the walking taco that use these oyster mushrooms, I did shred them. Don't necessarily want to do that in here unless you get to one of these larger pieces. Sometimes I just like to split them in half, but the idea is to keep them in here. We're going to be focusing quite a bit on the final appearance of this roll and making the ends look really pretty. So having these kind of pieces sticking out at the end will look really nice. All right, so that's probably all I'm going to use today. Now to season these up, I'm going to add just a bit of that mixture that we put on the squash. So this is our maple syrup and Bragg's. I'm just going to stir this up, and these will hang out. They will absorb this flavor, and they'll be so good inside of the roll. All right, so there's one last thing that I want to do, and it's a bit of a sauce that's going to go on top, maybe on the plate. And it's going to be a corn wasabi sauce. So let's make that. This sauce is so good. I had this like flavor idea in my head while I was driving around and came home and tested it, and it's incredible, and it's a flavor combination that just works really well. And it is wasabi and corn. So I just have here 2 cups of frozen corn that I have thawed out. Of course you could use fresh if you wanted to. And I'm trying my best to get this into a NutriBullet cup here. And you want it drained, you don't want it too watery, you want it thawed out. And I could add a bit of liquid, we'll see how thick it is here, but ideally it's just gonna be corn and wasabi, and I might bump up the sweetness a little bit with some agave syrup. So there's our 2 cups of corn, and to that I'm going to add a teaspoon of wasabi powder. If you're not a fan of heat, maybe just add a little bit less. You still want that flavor. If you like more heat, definitely add some more. So wasabi, corn. I do think I am gonna add just a little squeeze of agave in there just to bump up the sweetness, just to help with that balance of sweet and spicy. Taps the lid, and we're just gonna blend it up. So it's been going for 45 seconds maybe, and I just want to give it a test and see how the spice level is, see how the flavor is, and just to check the texture. So it's a little bit chunky. I think I'm gonna have it go a bit longer, but this is just gonna be a nice sauce to go on top of the rolls and to maybe even drizzle on the plate. So let's taste it. It's such a cool flavor, just like the sweetness of the corn and the wasabi shines through. So let me just blend this up a little bit more, and then we'll flip over the squash and pretty much ready to go. These have been cooking for about 16 or 17 minutes, and I just want to go ahead and flip them over so I can baste the other side with the sauce. It is nice if you get a bit of caramelization on here. Mine are a bit thicker cut today, so I'm not getting as much, but I'll probably let them go a little bit longer on the other side so that they do get some nice caramelization on there. They're all basted, and I've actually flipped the tray around just so they cook more evenly, and I'm gonna put this back into the oven for about 15 more minutes. And as soon as they're just nice and golden brown and soft, they're ready to be turned into sushi. My kabocha squash finished in the oven. They were in there for probably about 35 minutes, and as soon as they came out, I brushed them one last time with that sauce, and I just kind of letting it hang out here so that it's cool to the touch so that I can assemble these rolls. And well, that's pretty much everything. We're ready to roll up. I have my nori, which I'm gonna be using, and I've never used these before. They're soy wrappers, but Ben doesn't really care for the taste of nori in sushi, so we're gonna do a little experiment and try these out. So, well, let's get rolling. I'm going to just use some lightly dampened hands to help me out when I apply my brown rice here. Now, one thing that I always get really triggered by when I watch other people make sushi is they press the rice down into the nori, and you don't really want to do that. You want to just kind of sprinkle it over, kind of move it so that it fills in everything, and you don't want to push it down or pack it. It just gives it kind of a pasty texture that you don't want. And again, this brown rice, I'm really shocked that it does as well as it does in these sushi rolls. And you really just don't want to overcook this rice, and again, you don't want to push it into the nori. You want it to be nice and fluffy. I'm going to be rolling this to this particular one inside out, so the rice is going to be on the outside. And each time I go back to get more rice, I am dipping my hands in water. Again, it just really helps with things sticking. Now let's go ahead and flip it over. First thing I want to add, if I can find it here, is my squash. And as I said, we want to really focus on making sure that the edges are pretty. So I'm just kind of opening it up a little bit, and I'm allowing the ends to stick out. And I want to find sort of the more cooked ends to hang out, and you'll see when we slice it later, it's going to look really nice. All right, so there is our kabocha squash. I'm going to add, maybe I'll add a couple pieces here of our roasted red, or no, it's not roasted, our red pepper. Going to add mushrooms, again, being conscious of the edge, and I want some of those like more petal pieces to come out the end. And then just fill in the rest. Pickled onion. Be careful with this, you don't want it to overpower things. Our pea shoots. Again, you want some of those little petal ends to hang out. And the last thing is our avocado. And now we roll. Using the mat to help guide you, and this is a silicone mat, so it doesn't stick. Obviously, if you're using a bamboo mat, you would want to cover this in some plastic wrap. All right, form the mat on the outside just to press in, make sure everything is sealed. And there we have it. I'm just gonna set this one aside for right now while I roll up the other one before we slice them. All right, let's slice these up. Now we want to try to get 8 pieces out of each of these, and of course I have a wet towel here, or rag. That's just going to help me make sure that my knife stays clean and goes through each cut without dragging too much. And if you didn't like all of the ingredients that are in these, obviously you can pick and choose. If you just wanted to take the idea of the brown rice, it's such a great option for sushi, especially if you're trying not to eat white rice. I never really knew that you could do it this easily, and it's delicious. All right, let's just go ahead and plate this one up. I'm going to, just make a nice drizzle of our corn sauce. And I'm going to take the one with the stuff hanging out the top, put it on the back. And then I'm just gonna lay each roll, it's upside down. And then we'll finish it off with another one of the end pieces. It does cut a little bit easier when the wrap is on the outside, as you can see. So it's up to you. So these are gonna be the ones that I taste. Fingers a little bit messy, so let me clean up here and then we'll do a taste test. After a torturous and long glamour shot shoot, I finally get to give these rolls a try. Admittedly, the ones with the rice on the outside kind of were falling apart a little bit. I'm just kind of rushing through it, trying to make this video happen. So obviously take a little bit more time, make sure your knife is sharp, and the rice will stick a little bit better when you cut it. Is the perfect fall sushi roll. That squash is incredible. I love all the flavors, the wasabi corn sauce and like the teriyaki flavor that's actually on the squash, and everything just comes together in such great flavor and harmony. And there's like creaminess from the squash, but then you have like the brightness from the onions and the pea shoots. It's just incredible. I haven't really tried it with the soy wrapper, so let's give that one a try too. I really like it. Really good flavor. I mean, it's delicious with both of them, but I kind of like, I like the soy roll a little bit better, but they're so expensive. It's like $4 for 5 rolls. It's ridiculous. So anyways, well, I hope you give this a try. And whether you make this with brown rice or white rice, or maybe try even butternut squash or other types of squash, or swap out some of the ingredients. It's just kind of giving you some ideas on what you can do with vegan sushi, that you don't necessarily have to try to make something like eel or try to make it like crab, that you sort of own the fact that it is made with vegetables and you're trying to make a vegetable sushi. And there's a variety of vegetables and things that you can use inside of these sushi rolls that are really fulfilling and satisfying and really serve that sushi craving that you may have. So if you do make this, definitely comment below, take pictures, post it on Instagram, hashtag #MonsonMadeThis. Follow me on Instagram at @MonsonMadeThis. It's not growing that well on Instagram. Maybe my pictures aren't that great, but if you follow me on here, please do follow me on Instagram as well. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet already. Like this video if you like it. Share it with all of your friends and family and anyone that you want to make delicious sushi. And I'm ready to go. I'm gonna finish the rest of these rolls. Have a great week. I will see you next week with a brand new recipe video. I think that's it. Yep, have a great week. Bye.